Okay, picture this. It's Las Vegas 2012 in the chairman's suite at the Palazzo Hotel, a very upmarket hotel. It's $25,000 a night and the whole floor has been taken over just for this one party. Leonardo DiCaprio is going to be there. Kim Kardashian is there. Goldman Sachs bankers are there. There are so many bottles of Cristal champagne that staff have lost count. And at the peak of the night, Britney Spears emerges from a massive birthday cake. The man throwing this party is 30 years old. His name is Jho Low. He has no company, no product, no legitimate source of income that anyone can identify. But his friends, of course, they just go along with it. It's a fun party for them. But in the weeks leading up to this party, he quietly moved $4.5 billion through a web of shell companies so complex that even his own lawyers couldn't fully explain it. He is currently a fugitive living in Shanghai under a fake name. And this is just one night. Today we're getting into the 1MDB scandal, one of the most jaw-dropping financial crimes in modern history. And I genuinely need you to stay with me because the deeper this goes, the more unhinged it gets. So who is Jho Low? Let's start at the beginning. Who is this guy and why did nobody stop him? Well, Jho Low, real name Low Tek Jho, was born in Malaysia in 1981. His family had money, not billions, but they were comfortable enough to send him to Harrow School in England, which is one of the most elite private schools in the world. I mean, Winston Churchill even went there. Then he went to the Wharton School of Business in America, which is one of the most prestigious business schools on the planet, so they weren't struggling by any means. So this is not some back alley criminal operating in the shadows, sketchy. No, this is a well-educated, well-spoken, charming young man who understood that from a very early age, the fastest route to serious wealth wasn't talent or hard work. It was access. And at Wharton, he started building that access obsessively. Fellow students later described him as someone who was always name-dropping, always flashing his cash, always positioning himself next to anyone who mattered. He constantly talked about his connections to Middle Eastern royalty, to sheikhs, to government money all the time. At the time, he was a bit much, people thought. A try-hard, someone who wanted to fit in and show, like, I'm one of you. He was more talk than substance, though. But it turns out he was building the most dangerous Rolodex in history. So let's get into the fund. So by 2009, Jho Low had maneuvered himself into the inner circle of Malaysia's Prime Minister, a man called Najib Razak. And this is where the story really begins. Because Malaysia wanted to create a sovereign wealth fund. The idea was simple and genuinely noble on paper. The government would pool money, invest it wisely, and use the returns to benefit the normal Malaysian person. Infrastructure, energy, tourism, jobs, real development for a developing nation. And that fund, that was called 1MDB, One Malaysia Development Berhad. And Jho Low told the Prime Minister he could bring in billions from Middle Eastern investors. He name-dropped, he connected, he made himself seem absolutely irreplaceable. But here's the thing, Jho Low held no official title at 1MDB. None whatsoever. He had no title, no desk, no business cards. He was just there in meetings he had no business being in, whispering in the Prime Minister's ear, making introductions, pulling strings. And Najib let him do it, allegedly because Low had made him a very attractive promise that some of the money's fund could serve as political slush fund, which is cash to pay off supporters, money to fund election campaigns, a financial safety net for staying in power. And obviously Najib really liked the sound of that. So from the very first day, this fund that was meant to be benefiting and transforming Malaysian people was already being set up for a vehicle for theft. And a 28-year-old with no official role was sitting right at the center of it. So this is where Goldman Sachs comes in, because this part of the story is very extraordinary because Jho Low didn't do this alone. Between 2012 and 2013, Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful investment banks in the world, helped 1MDB raise $6.5 billion through bond deals. $6.5 billion. massive amounts of money. And Goldman's own compliance department had flagged Jho Low not once but twice, in 2010 and again in 2013, saying that the bank should not do business with him. They couldn't verify where his money actually came from. And that's a massive flag in finance, obviously. That's basically someone putting a flashing neon sign above your head and saying something is wrong with this person. But Goldman ignored it, which is crazy to me. A massive investment bank, they chose to ignore it for whatever reason, because the fees were extraordinary. Goldman made around $600 million from these deals. In the world of investment banking, that's an almost unheard of amount for this type of transaction. Their then CEO, Lloyd Blankfein, personally attended meetings with the Malaysian Prime Minister. He hosted Najib at private client events, and he helped build the relationships that made these deals possible. And all the while, the compliance department's warnings sat there unheard, but they still existed. Later, Goldman's current CEO admitted that the bank fell short. I mean, no shit, but yeah. Two Goldman bankers, Tim and Roger, I'm not even going to try and pronounce their last names here, were eventually convicted. Goldman itself paid nearly $3 billion in fines, the largest penalty under US anti-bribery laws in history at that time. But that came later in 2012. The money was flowing and Jho Low was already spending it. Now let's get into the spending part, because this is where I need you to just let these numbers wash over you, because some of them are absolutely obscene. Between 2009 and 2015, investigators believe Jho Low and his associates stole $4.5 billion from 1MDB. The US Department of Justice called it the largest kleptocracy case in American history. And here's how he spent it. So he bought luxury properties in New York, Beverly Hills, London. He bought a $250 million super yacht. Imagine a floating 5-star hotel. That's what this thing was. He bought a Monet painting for $35 million, $35 million, and a $100 million stake in EMI Music Publishing. For what reason? Well, because he could, of course. The parties were something else entirely. In just 8 months, from October 2009 to June 2010, he spent $85 million on parties and entertainment. $85 million in 8 months. He paid celebrities enormous sums just to show up and be seen with him. He would send bottles of champagne worth thousands of dollars to strangers' tables at clubs. He once ran up a tab of $160,000 in a single night. He reportedly bought a $325,000 white Ferrari as a gift, and he had Britney Spears emerge from the birthday cake at his Las Vegas party. And Leonardo DiCaprio attended multiple events with Jho Low over several years. He was given a $3.2 million painting as a gift, and he later returned it when investigators came knocking. So, I mean, we don't know if Leonardo knew about how Jho Low was shady, but after that he wanted no affiliation. Miranda Kerr at one point was dating Jho Low during this period. He gave her $8 million worth of jewelry, and she ended up returning that too. Again, she was like, leave me out of here, I don't want anything to do with this man. And the question that nobody seemed to be asking in these rooms were, where is your money coming from? I mean, obviously the man was rich, and I guess if you move in these rich circles, people don't really say, oh, so how have you gotten your money? How much are you actually worth? Where did it come from? Is it through family? Is it through investment? I guess they just accept at face value that you're one of them and you're a fellow rich person. He was 30 years old and spending like a whole entire nation. Now let's get on to the Wolf of Wall Street, because this is just the most iconic part. So in 2013, Martin Scorsese released a film called The Wolf of Wall Street. I love that film personally. It's one of my favorites. And it's starring Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a film about a fraudster who steals money, lives obscenely, throws these wild parties, and eventually gets caught. It's a film about greed and excess and the consequences of committing financial crimes. So Jho Low co-financed this film with stolen money. So he invested through a production company that he set up with Najib's own stepson, Riza Aziz, approximately $100 million into this film. Money taken directly from 1MDB, from the Malaysian people. And the film was made, and it was a massive critical success, as we all know. It won 5 Academy Award nominations, hundreds of millions at the box office, and in the credits, Jho Low was personally thanked. So he sat in these Hollywood rooms, he walked those red carpets, he attended those award ceremonies. A man who had stolen $1 billion from a developing nation, standing next to some of the most famous, powerful people on earth, being celebrated for bringing a film about financial crime to life. Like, you literally could not make this up. And get this right, the FBI and Department of Justice later seized the film's royalty as part of their asset recovery. The production company agreed to pay around $60 million to settle the claims that it had been financed with stolen funds. So let's get into the collapse, because of course this wasn't going to last forever. In 2015, a journalist published evidence that nearly $700 million from 1MDB had been deposited directly into Prime Minister Najib Razak's personal bank account. So this story absolutely detonated across Malaysia and then the world, and investigators launched simultaneously across at least 14 countries their investigations: America, Switzerland, Singapore, Luxembourg, Abu Dhabi. Investigators started following the money, and the more threads they pulled, the more it just absolutely unraveled. So when police raided Najib's property after his 2018 election defeat, they found 284 boxes of designer handbags, $30 million in cash in multiple currencies, a jewelry collection that included 14 tiaras. I mean, the scale of it was kind of cartoonish. $30 million in cash in your house? Oh. So, of course, Najib is arrested, and he is charged with 42 counts of corruption, money laundering, and criminal breach of trust. He was convicted and sentenced to 12 years in prison, and he is currently serving that sentence right now. And as for Goldman Sachs, they paid nearly $3 billion in fines, and 2 of their bankers were convicted. JP Morgan later paid $330 million to settle related claims. Asset recovery has been ongoing for years, and by 2025, over $1.4 billion has been returned to Malaysia, with still more being pursued. And as for Jho Low, well, he ran away. Right, he ran away. He's believed to be living in a mansion in Shanghai under a fake Australian passport with a fake Greek name. Interpol has a red notice out for him, and in his absence, he's actually been convicted in multiple countries. His lawyers have released statements claiming he is innocent, but he has never faced trial. The super yacht was later seized and eventually sold at auction for $126 million, less than half of what he paid for it. He is on the run and nobody is caught up with him yet, and he owes so many people so much money. The Malaysian people, I'm sure, would love to see him be convicted. I mean, let's just get into it for a minute. We have this young Malaysian man. He is also a Malaysian person with no government position, no official title, no legitimate source of income that anyone can identify, but he's taught his way into the circle, the inner circle of the Prime Minister, and he manages to convince one of the most powerful investment banks in the world to raise billions for him, despite their own compliance team screaming at them that something's wrong. He stole $4.5 billion from the people of Malaysia, laundered it through shell companies spanning multiple continents, and used it to fund one of the most celebrated Hollywood films of the decade, and is currently living freely in Shanghai, while the Prime Minister sits in a prison cell. So the 1MDB scandal is one of the greatest financial crimes ever committed, and it worked for so many years because everyone who should have asked questions decided that the money was more important than the answers. So thank you for being here and watching with me. If you want more stories like this, then trust me, you have to subscribe. The rabbit hole of these stories really is limitless.